Lupus LA would like to thank our generous sponsors for their support of the Your Story, Our Fight podcast. Gemini Beauty believes in beauty for a cause, and in their case, the cause is lupus. The team at Gemini is changing the skincare game for good. We thank GSK for their focus on autoimmune disease and their continued support of Lupus LA. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Lupus LA podcast, Your Story, Our Fight. I'm Adam Selkowitz, and as always at the top of the show, I want to thank our sponsors, GSK and Gemini Beauty, for allowing us to tell amazing lupus stories. And this one today is it's personal, it's nice. It's Sheba Family Zaman is here with us. Sheba is a fellow Lupus LA board member. She's also happens to be a computer engineer and a competitive tennis player, and just an all-around great leader. I think that's that's the word that comes to mind when I think about you. And you've been involved with Lupus LA for a long time. And in sort of preparing for this podcast, I've learned so much more about your personal story, and I'm excited to share it with our audience. So welcome, Sheba.
Thank you so much, Adam. That's so kind.
Of course. So it's the way your lupus, I think, came about. I've noticed a pattern that it's sort of in those college years. That's kind of when it started, and I think that's been very apparent with a lot of the people we've talked to. So tell me how that came about, and what you were doing before you started having symptoms, et cetera.
Yeah, I think that the symptoms gradually built. I was diagnosed when I was in college. I think I probably had it since high school. And I was always quite active and always quite feeling good. But there came a point where it was hard to wake up. And then the symptoms started. I had regular fevers and swelling in my hands, and until it got to the point where I had trouble walking. I had like a lymph node the size of a golf ball in my face and the malar rash. And, eventually they discovered nephritis and they think maybe the start of encephalitis and whatnot. So that all came about in college.
And what was the time period sort of from I'm having trouble waking up to diagnosis?
10 years.
Really?
Yeah.
10 years.
My high school friend used to come to my house to wake me up in the morning so that I'd make it to the bus on time. And I was 26 when I was diagnosed.
And so tell me, is that just kind of Sheba can't get out of bed, haha, joke of the family? Or was there actual maybe this is, wrong, or something's not right?
No, it was kind of the joke. I'm not a morning person. I would also stay up all night reading a lot. So we thought it's just that I didn't sleep well. In retrospect, I probably did that because with the lupus and when I flare, I do have trouble sleeping at night. We just made excuses, I think. You're sick, you're hormonal, you're this, you're that. When in all reality, it was actually lupus manifesting.
And I always wonder, because we get a lot of people who look back and say, oh, I definitely had symptoms further and further and further back. Do you think you have this internal struggle in your head? Oh, maybe I should go to the doctor. I'm fine. Are you making those excuses sort of that the outside world is making? Are you doing that internally as also?
I probably just didn't realize in the beginning. My mother's a clinical psychologist and my father is a psychiatrist. And so I think
right.
As a teenager, I thought, okay, it's just psychological. Now that I know myself and I look back, I realize, okay, it wasn't actually psychological. There was a biological component to it. And then obviously that lupus, I think the first time I saw Dr. Wallace, he told me the head bone is connected to the lupus bone. And that was his way of telling me it has psychological effects. So I realize it's that, and I don't question it anymore.
And you were you were an athlete in high school and college, presumably, right? So tell me a little bit about that sort of juxtaposition.
I actually probably struggled more with athleticism in high school. Like, I was on the basketball team and I used to swim competitively. I was a lifeguard. So I was active, but I think it was difficult for me to be active. I remember being sick running a lot. We'd run suicides in basketball, and I'd literally go throw up afterwards. But after treatment, that all went away. And so I'm in my athleticism era now.
Well, we're going to get to that for sure.
So,
and so when so you go to college, is that sort of when you started to think, these symptoms are getting more frequent, more apparent? What sort of led you to the doctor? And I'm going to backtrack too, because, presumably you had physicals every year, right? And in high school and leading up to this, did any doctor ever pick up on any of the symptoms you were talking about?
Yeah, I actually went to the doctor quite a bit leading up to the diagnosis. I actually went for my skin and the malar rash, and I was not diagnosed. I was actually given an antibiotic that can make lupus worse. And after actually officially being diagnosed, that plagued me for a while. I was quite upset that I'd been misdiagnosed so many times. I went to Mexico with my family, and I'd been in the sun, and I'd been on that antibiotic that makes lupus worse. And I think the doctor in Mexico realized that I had lupus. According to my sister, he realized, but he didn't speak English, and I didn't speak Spanish at the time. And so I was diagnosed shortly thereafter, maybe like 2 months later, if that.
So what's that like when you go back and think about, all the people along the way who missed it? Do you dwell on that? Do you move? Does it motivate you? Because I do feel like that happens a lot, and I don't necessarily think there's, gazillions of bad doctors out there. There's just good doctors that have a bad day or didn't think about something, or that lupus isn't top of mind like it should be. So how does that kind of how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think when I was first diagnosed, I spent a good 3 months, a good summer, feeling sorry for myself and crying myself to sleep every night. And during that period of time, I told one of the doctors, like two of the doctors, off in my head multiple times. One of them took a phone call in front of me, a date that he had right after seeing me, and he told her, I'm just here saving lives. And that haunted me for a moment, because I was like, no, you did the opposite. But truth is at the end of the day, doctors are human beings, and they're only partly responsible. I think as patients, we have to advocate for ourselves, and we have to say, no, I think you have it wrong. There's something really wrong with me, and I need you to take another look, and we have to be confident in what we know about our bodies and how we feel. And I think a lot of times we just sort of bow down and take a more passive role with our health. And so I think I had to accept that responsibility. And I think after I stopped feeling sorry for myself, I took my health and my life under control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so what kinds of things did you do? And was it immediate after that 3 months? You said, okay, I'm changing my life. I'm going to be a part of the healing process of my lupus, or you're still in college. College kids are notoriously, not self-aware in that sense. So did you have to grow up really fast? Is that kind of the feeling you had?
Kind of. So I lived in Canada. I lived in Montreal, and I was diagnosed here in California. And my sister lived here, and she just looked at me one day, and I had been in her house crying every night for 3 months. And she just looked at me and she said, no one's going to make you better. Not your mom, not your doctor, not anything. It's only you that can help yourself. And it struck a chord, and it sobered me up, if you will. It woke me up, and that was a pivotal changing point in my life. And so I completely changed my lifestyle. I moved here, I changed my diet, I started sleeping every night without fail, 8 to 12 hours, whatever it was I needed. I cut toxicity out of my life, if you will, managed stress, started doing yoga every day. I just changed my life.
When you say cut toxicity, is that in the diet? That's in the what? How toxic were you?
It's all the things, right? It's diet, it's people, it's thoughts, it's in all the ways. Like anything that would not serve me, I did my best to move on from that and change my mentality around that.
And how quickly did you notice an impact from that?
Well, I mean, I started on 90 milligrams of steroids, so a super high dose. So I
have you beat, by the way, because when I started on 250 milligrams every other day.
You must have been in the
for like
for that.
A year. I'm old. So I was 16 and I took just tons of prednisone because the idea at the time was the normal course of treatment for lupus was small steroid dose and ramp up if you need to. But I had this amazing pediatric rheumatologist, sort of the Dan Wallace for kids on the East Coast, I would say. And he thought, no, we have to put out the fire as quickly as possible, which he saved my life.
Yes.
But it was a massive amount of steroids. And prednisone and I are very friendly. We don't, I don't have terrible side effects like a lot of people do. But yes, it was like a massive amount for a while, and then like 100, and then down and down and down. But 90 is a lot,
I mean, I think it was also a blessing, and immediately stopped the nephritis. I mean, immediately, very, very quickly. I remember thinking, oh, this is what it feels like not to be extremely exhausted all the time. Like where, brushing your teeth is not like exhausting.
Right. And then it's the other side. You're like wired for, a while, but,
and then I gained 50 pounds in 3 months. So I did have that. And I think it does make me a little bit emotional, but it works really well. So it's sort of, the two sides of the coin, like, still happy I got it, still happy I got treated. Hopefully I don't ever have to do that again. I forgot what our question was.
And then, the other side of it was, did those lifestyle changes also?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the prednisone obviously is a dramatic intervention,
yes.
But then once sort of the dust settled, how did those lifestyle choices make you better?
Yeah, very much so. Very, very quickly. So I needed the steroids to come out of my system a little bit for me to feel quite good, but the lifestyle changes are everything. And I see it now. Like if my diet reverses, or I don't get good sleep, or I lose someone, have a fight with someone, any kind of stress, like, and some of it you can't prevent, but I
Right.
immediately feel the side effects.
Okay.
So
that makes sense.
Yeah, the lifestyle was everything.
All right. I want to tell me a little bit about this Machu Picchu experience, because I know we may be backtracking in the story, but when we talked before, that was a pretty incredible story you had. And then we'll take a break, and then we'll get into Lupus LA and all the other stuff.
Yeah, so I was visiting my sister and mother in California when I was diagnosed. We'd actually done a little trip to Mexico, and that's when I got really sick. And I was diagnosed sort of unofficially by their family doctor who'd done a lupus profile. And I was very lucky because I was paying cash, and I told her, I don't want you to do a lot of tests. And she somehow did a lupus profile, knowing, I think, read the results in front of me. She hadn't seen it before. I had no idea what lupus was. And she just sort of got really shocked in front of me, realizing that I was positive for lupus. And I made an appointment with Dr. Wallace, and it was 3 weeks out before he had an opening for new patients. Through a family friend, and I'm not the type to sort of just sit for 3 weeks and do nothing. I have a girlfriend that we like to travel the world together, and she was going to Peru and going to climb Machu Picchu, and I decided, well, that's a great idea. I have 3 weeks to kill before I see the doctor. So packed all my bags, probably gave my whole family a heart attack, and head to LAX. And in the Tom Bradley terminal, waiting in line, I was violently throwing up. They brought medical to the, airlines, like to the check-in line. And I convinced them I should get on the flight, and they wheelchaired me to the flight. And I got on, and I got even more sick on the plane there, and then went into like a hostel in Lima, and sharing my room with some English people. And my friend arrived the next day. She'd been in the jungle in Ecuador, and she's a medical student. Actually, she's a doctor now. And she had actually gotten a fly larva, like lay an egg in her head. And so we both had to go to the doctor, me to get clearance to fly back. The airline would not let me fly back without medical clearance after what happened on the way there. And her, so that they could remove the fly larva, whatever that had hatched basically in her head. Right. And I was going to go climb Machu Picchu, but my older sister called her and said, no way, you're sending her back. And she has an older sister, and I think she was very scared of mine. And indeed, as a medical student, knew it was not a good idea. So I was sent back, and then hospitalized for a week actually after that.
Yeah. Well, that's a cautionary tale for all our listeners. Listen to your body, the good and the bad. And Machu Picchu sounds like a very difficult thing for a lupus patient. But I applaud your tenacity for sure. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back, and we're going to talk about work and sports and Lupus LA. So we'll be right back.
Lupus LA's Facebook Live Chat series connects leading lupus and health experts with our community to answer the most current and important questions. For more information, visit lupusla.org.
We are back on the Lupus LA podcast, Your Story, Our Fight, talking to Sheba Family Zaman. And after our Machu Picchu story, we're going to jump back into real life a little bit. And so tell me about career. Tell me about how the lupus impacts kind of your choices in terms of while you're in college, figuring all this out, getting the lupus diagnosis. Tell me kind of how it guides you or how you fought against it.
Yeah, I mean, I think getting an undergraduate degree was not a question for me. I was close to graduating, so I definitely did my undergrad, but I was planning to go to grad school and spend a lot more time in school. I think if I had the choice, I would probably study the rest of my life. So I didn't because of the diagnosis, and also for moving to the US, you either can work or you study as on a visa. And so I mean, I have a lovely career. I work in the life science industry. So I actually work with quality control and quality assurance of medications, including, parenteral drugs like Benlysta and the things that, will help our lupus patients, basically. So I love it, and it has a good flexibility in that I can work at home and I can also travel sometimes, and it's worked for me, and I'm really grateful to have had that career.
Did your choice of career or choice of industry come out of any kind of lupus connection, or was it totally random?
It was totally random and coincidence. I actually started at this company prior to my diagnosis, and I don't know if I would have moved on and done something else, but I'm grateful. I think it worked out the way it was meant to. And I also volunteered for a nonprofit in this industry for the Parenteral Drug Association. And maybe that I wouldn't have done otherwise, because it's a way of giving back, I suppose, to the industry. So,
tell me a little bit about this drive you have on the philanthropy side, on getting involved, and how much of that was part of the take control of your lupus approach, or other motivation.
Well, to be honest, I sometimes think it's selfish. I think that giving back is purpose in life. And so I think that when we don't have purpose and when we aren't serving our communities in some way, we are not fulfilled as human beings. I think all human beings at their core, I mean, maybe we have exceptions, I don't know, serial killers or whatever it is, but I think right. At our core, we all do want to be of service. And I think it makes us happy. So that's the part that's selfish.
Well, I think there are probably a lot of people on the other side who are more selfish for not doing it, but I applaud your outlook on people in general. But yes, I think you're right. I think what you get out of it, the people who know, like if you participate in a nonprofit, if you contribute to a nonprofit, if you have a focus outside of your family and your career that's philanthropic, it does really bring you joy and light. And I think, and that's my opinion. And I think it helps you stay healthy. I really do.
Yes, it does. I think it's rewarding. But it's a win-win, right? It's rewarding for whoever you're helping, and it's in turn rewarding to yourself as well.
Mm-hmm. So tell me, I think people, maybe people are curious, maybe they're not, but we're going to tell them anyway. How did you initially get involved with Lupus LA? Because I think it's my sense that the people listening, we have so many incredible lupus patients that tune into this podcast. And I am sure there is well, what could I do? Here I am, wherever I'm listening to this podcast, what can people do? Or I think your story of how you became a Lupus LA board member is really interesting, because it was not a walk in the door one day and say, hey, I want to be a board member. And I think kind of understanding your path would be helpful.
Yeah, it was a slow progress, I would say. So I heard about Lupus LA through Dan Wallace. And at the time, I was kind of in and out of his office quite frequently. I was getting a Benlysta infusion every 4 weeks for, I don't know, 7, 8 years. And kind of from the start, I knew that this organization had been founded, that he did so in order to ensure there was an organization serving patients now, like providing the services that patients need now. Sure, we are working on a cure and et cetera. And I'd seen firsthand how much lifestyle changes can, and just support can improve the quality of your life. So to me, it rang true to see an organization that had good patient services, that had support groups, that had emergency grants, because I'm very privileged in that I have an amazing support system. I had a wonderful doctor, et cetera. There's some states that don't even have rheumatologists in the entire state. And so it was an organization that really ran true to me. And at the time, I believe, Lupus LA was having like a 5K or 10, like they were having, marathon fundraisers and this and that, and patient conferences, just education. A lot of it is just knowing what to do as well, knowing what to eat, knowing what to do. So, probably I went to the conference and one of those like 5K marathon events, like 16 years ago. I don't know how long ago.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. I think that's really a good message to people is you don't have to come in and, write a $20,000 check to be a part of Lupus LA or any philanthropic organization. You can really take baby steps which are important steps, and just showing that you have a connection to the organization and an interest in what the work they're doing is. I'm surprised actually we don't get more calls or suggestions or, oh, how could I do a bake sale at my school and raise $100 for Lupus LA or $500 for Lupus LA? To me, that's the grassroots participation that can be so important. And then that's when you start to develop a relationship. Because to me, Lupus LA or any organization has a relationship with their constituents, and that's where we find the best people, is by building that back and forth. And like you saying, oh, would you be interested in doing this? Would you be interested in doing that? And then building that relationship over time. So this was not supposed to be an ad for Lupus LA, future board members, but I do. I think that that's such an important part of keeping an organization new and fresh is about bringing in new talent and new people and really being responsive to our listeners and our people that we serve. I think that's so important.
Yeah, and you can help at any level of the organization, right? So I think, you do what you can, and at the end of the day, you'll still be helping people.
Yeah.
I think you, even at the kind of height of your illness, there's still some things you can do, or that maybe your family would do, or your friends would do, and it is selfishly rewarding. So definitely something I would encourage people to try. We have an underserved community of lupus patients, and we have no small amount of people that have lupus, and many that have like organ involvement and kind of serious side effects that really would benefit from support now, versus kind of waiting for the cure. I mean, that's coming too, but
Yeah. Okay. Before we talk about tennis, what is your advice for a newly diagnosed lupus patient?
If I had one thing to say, like to any lupus patients listening, it would just be that I know each of our journeys is quite different, but you asked me about lifestyle and kind of the psychology around the lupus. And I really think one thing that's important and made a difference for me is is not making lupus part of my identity. And so I have lupus, but it doesn't have me, and I am not my lupus. And I think that distinction and sort of not, I mean, we all have our moments, but not taking that victim mentality and just trying to push slowly as much as I could is the reason sort of I can be active and healthy today. And it took a really long time, but it's worth it. Like, I have a whole life in front of me. And so if anyone's at the beginning of their diagnosis, I would say to remember that, because when I was first diagnosed, I just thought my life was over. And really what it was is that I had an opportunity to rebuild a life and build a new life that was much more mindful and better than the life that I had before. It's out of necessity that I have to cut out, let's say, toxicity or bad things, but it's also a gift that I was forced to do that and now live a great life. And so that's something I would tell people to remember.
Absolutely. All right. We're going to finish with competitive tennis. Tell me, you have an important match coming up, and tell me a little bit about how you got into competitive tennis and how you are now about to compete for a national doubles title or national team title. Can you get I don't know. You tell me. Yeah. Tell me the story.
Sure. I mean, and first I want to say before, I didn't start off being able to play tennis or anything at all. Back in 2006 when I was diagnosed, I could barely do yoga. I could barely hold most yoga poses. And so it was a slow progression towards building strength, especially after the steroids. I had something like 50% body fat, or it was a very high number. And so I slowly kind of built it and built strength, and kind of went through activities from yoga to like paddleboarding and swimming to, and then 6 years ago, I just saw a class, like a tennis class. And it was kind of the first time I picked up a racket, was 6 years ago at the age of 37. And it was just so fun. And what I love about tennis is that you don't realize you're working out. It's like I'm being tricked into working out. And and at the end of it, I've burned an insane amount of calories. And so 2 years ago, I think it was, maybe almost 3, I joined a USTA league. And USTA has leagues at various levels. And 2 years ago, we formed the team that I'm on now. They were called the JBs. And we're all women's 18 plus team. And it's just a lovely group of ladies. So even when I sort of don't feel like going to practice, or I'm tired, or etc., I will go, and it will put me in a great mood. I've just such a lovely community there, and they're amazing players, and we just have done so well. So this season, or the spring season, we won our playoffs in LA, like the league in LA. We played Southern California. They call it sectionals. So teams from all over Southern California. We won that title. And so now on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, there'll be a national competition. It happens to be in San Diego this year. It's in various locations around the nation, but we're lucky it's really close this year. And we'll be competing against, I think, 16 or 17 other teams, from around the country. And
that's incredible.
Yeah, and so I play doubles. Yeah. We have doubles players and singles players on the team, and I mainly play doubles. And I have 2 different partners, and really looking forward to playing my match Friday and Saturday.
Do you think what's the? I assume they know you have lupus. What's that support system like for you?
It's very lovely, actually. One thing that's quite funny. It's a small world, but Michelle Kramer is our USTA coordinator for the Los Angeles region, and her father was Dr. Lou Kramer, who was a rheumatologist and pioneer in rheumatology and in lupus. And Dan Wallace actually knows him and, was like his mentor, if you will. And so Michelle is really aware and very understanding, and she helps captain our teams, or she helps the captains in our teams. And so she's quite familiar with lupus, and they're quite understanding. So if I'm not feeling well, or we have enough players that someone else could replace me if need be.
Well, that's not going to happen this weekend.
That's not going to happen.
We are so excited for you. This is going to air probably after the match, so maybe we'll put a little chyron on there with the results after the fact. If they're really great, we'll put them up there. But you are a champion already in our hearts, and I really appreciate you doing this podcast. And good luck this weekend. And thanks for being such a big part of our organization and telling your story.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Adam.
On behalf of the entire team at Lupus LA, we thank you for joining the Your Story, Our Fight podcast. Please tune in, spread the word, and come back for more inspiring lupus stories. I'm your host, Adam Selkowitz, wishing you good health, and to always remember, your story is our fight.